Welcome to Larry's Library. It is the first Tuesday of a new month, and so it's time once again for a Top 10 Tuesday. Now, this time we are going back to the year 1982. So, what can I tell you about 1982? Well, a fair amount. Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, that was released in the U.S., and it became the biggest box office hit for, well, the next 11 years. We also had a film adaptation of The Twilight Zone, but it was not without some tragedy. On the set of that, there was a terrible accident, a helicopter crash, and actor Vic Morrow and two child actors died in that stunt in California. More bad news from 82. We had the Tylenol murders. Now, this is an unsolved case. Even to this day, we still don't know who did it, but someone laced a bunch of Tylenol capsules with potassium cyanide. It killed 7 people in Chicago, Illinois. And I think this is what caused the tamper-proof packaging that we have now on over-the-counter medicines. Came out of that tragedy. Sony launched the first consumer-level compact disc player. It was the model, let's see, I got notes here, the CDP 101. Now, this was pretty clunky big machine compared to what we got later, and I did not own this model. I got into CDs really early, but not that early. I think it might have been like the next year or so before I got my first CD player. Magazine, their Man of the Year for 1982, for the first time, wasn't a man at all. It was the computer. That was their pick for Man of the Year that year. I understand that Steve Jobs wasn't too happy about that because he thought he was going to get that cover. And it didn't happen, although it was an Apple computer on the cover. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, came out in 1982. One of my all-time favorites. The first Conan movie, directed by the great John Milius, was released in 1982. I was 14 years old, and in this video, we're going to look at my favorite comics of that year, 1982. At number 10, I have Saga of the Swamp Thing, number 1. Now, this was the second Swamp Thing title, and it was written by Martin Pasco with some really underrated art by Tom Yeats. Now, eventually the Saga part was dropped from the title and just became Swamp Thing, and of course this is the series that introduced the world to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and all that, but that was years later. And this is, I think, kind of an underrated gem from this era. Check it out if you haven't already. At number 9, I have DC's Camelot 3000, issue number 1. Now, this was written by Mike W. Barr with incredible art by Brian Boland. And I never know if that's Bolland or Boland. I grew up pronouncing it Boland, but I think I was wrong. It's probably Bolland. Weigh it down in the comments and let me know if you know how to pronounce Brian Bolland or Boland correctly. But at any rate, the plot of this one is the year 3000, and the Earth is invaded by these horrible aliens, and King Arthur is resurrected, and he reforms the Knights of the Round Table to save the human race. It's really far out, but it is fun, and this art is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous, stunning art. Can't say enough good about Brian Boland's art here. It's fantastic. And if this sounds at all familiar, I mean, there are a lot of differences, but I can't help but think that Kieran Gillen was a fan of this series because his Once and Future really seems to owe a lot to this. I mean, Once and Future is a much darker tale, and King Arthur isn't exactly the hero in that one that he is in this one, but it is kind of similar themes in many ways. And if you're a fan of Once and Future and you haven't read Camelot 3000, check that out. You'll see what I mean. It's really good stuff. If for no other reason, the art is incredible. And that's why it's number 9. At number 8, I have Rom issue 30. Rom Space Knight issue 30. This is written by Bill Mantlo, of course, who wrote the entire series. Pencils by our pal Sal Buscema. And inks by the legendary Joe Sennett here. And this cover is by Al Milgrom. And look at that. Al Milgrom did some of the greatest covers in comic books. I mean, look at that. It's beautiful. Gorgeous stuff. This story has Rom battling the Metal Master and, of course, his creepy spiders. And this story is called Silver Spiders in the Snow. And I'll never forget those robot spiders dripping the acid venom onto Rom here on this cover. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Creepy story. Liked it a lot. At number 7, I have The Death of Captain Marvel. Or more accurately, this is Marvel graphic novel number 1. And this story started that series. This is written, penciled, and inked by the legendary Jim Starlin. I mean, what can kill the cosmic hero Captain Marvel? Well, spoiler, the answer is cancer, sadly. And yeah, this is an epic story, and it's, if you haven't read it, check it out. It's available in all kinds of reprints, of course. But yeah, this started the Marvel graphic novel series, and it's Jim Starlin goodness. At number 6, I have Daredevil issue 182. This is written in pencil by Frank Miller, of course, with inks by Klaus Janson. Matt Murdock hopelessly trying to deal with Elektra's death, and he's not doing very well. This is heartbreaking and powerful. If you haven't read Frank Miller's Daredevil, I mean, what are you doing? Well, why are you, I don't know, what are you doing with your life? Get it. It's available in all kinds of reprint editions, probably digitally as well, I'm quite sure. But check it out. I mean, look at this gorgeous cover. Yeah, this is a powerful one. Speaking of Frank Miller, at number 5, right in the middle of my countdown of my favorite comics from 1982, we've got issue 1 of the Wolverine Limited Series. And this, of course, it features this iconic cover. I mean, you know, it just doesn't get any better than that. If you're a Wolverine fan, I mean, this is a must-have. My copy that I've got a scan of here is autographed by Chris Claremont. That's the big scribble over the Wolverine logo. And Joe Rubinstein, the inker. I see in my notes here, my daughter Krista got Claremont to autograph this one at Heroes Con in 2022. And the Joe Rubinstein autograph came from PopCon in Indie PopCon in 2016. Also obtained by my daughter, so kudos for her for this, because this is a keeper. If you're unfamiliar with this legendary book, I'll give you a little bit about that. This miniseries, it continues Claremont's character-defining work on Wolverine. And it also continues and expands the doomed love story between Logan and Mariko Yoshida, and the dealings he had with Yoshida clan. I won't give you any spoilers for this very old book in case you haven't read this story, but it is fantastic. But, you know, as great as this story is, this comic book is a masterclass on how to draw comic books. It really is, especially action in a comic book. I mean, you look through these panels and, you know, you can't help but be blown away. Maybe I'll show some B-roll of it because it's just that good. This is how to draw comics. I mean, you know, just pick this up and thumb through it. If you don't know how to lay out pages or panels and show action, this will help you out. I mean, this is the good stuff right here. Doesn't get much better than this. At number 4, I have Uncanny X-Men issue 159. And this is written by Chris Claremont again. I mean, it's amazing how many of my favorite books of all time are written by Chris Claremont. I mean, but this is written by Chris Claremont with pencils by Bill Sienkiewicz and inks by Bob Wyacek. And this is a Sienkiewicz cover here also. And as you can see by the cover, there's a little hint there, it is a horrific tale. We've got Aurora sort of silhouetted in the back here, and she has fangs. And that's because this is the X-Men versus Dracula. And there's a lot of notable stuff that happens in this one, and I just love it. I will never forget this book. Wolverine makes a cross by, he tries to make a cross against Dracula with his claws. You know, I think he pulls one out and then two, or just one each, and makes a cross. And Dracula tells him that doesn't work and just bats him away. Why does it not work? Because you have to believe. And apparently Wolverine doesn't, not fully. He's not fully committed to that religious belief, so it doesn't work against Dracula. Kitty tries to use a cross against him, and it doesn't work for her either. Why? Because Kitty's Jewish. So that's not her faith, you know, so it doesn't work. But he does touch her Star of David pendant around her neck, and it burns his hand. So that was pretty cool. And then at some point, Nightcrawler, Kurt picks up a crucifix or a cross to use against Dracula. And it works great because, of course, Kurt is a believer. Kurt is a Catholic. or at least this time he was. Yeah, this is a damn near perfect comic book. It really is. Beautiful art by Bill Sienkiewicz. Killer story with Dracula. Yeah. And of course you have Wolverine in my preferred costume, the brown and tan. So yeah, I will never forget this one, and that's why it's number 4 on my countdown of favorite comic books from 1982. At number 3, I have Fantastic Four 242. Now this is right in the middle of, not quite in the middle, yeah, probably in the middle of John Byrne's epic Fantastic Four run. And it was hard to choose only one from 1982 because a lot of stuff happened in the FF book that year. Really good stuff. But I chose this one because it features the FF battling Terrax the Untamed, who is my second favorite Herald of Galactus of all time. Love that character. And it was interesting to see John Byrne's take on Terrax again, because John Byrne helped co-create Terrax with writer Marv Wolfman earlier in the series, about, I don't know, 25, 30 issues before this, before he took over as writer. That Terrax, I believe, was his first appearance. Pretty sure. Yeah, would have had to been, because he becomes the Herald of Galactus in that. And you see the whole thing with the alien race he came from, and this whole plot where the FF had to get him for Galactus for reasons. But that's not what this is about. That's in like 211 or 212 or something. This is 242, where Terrax returns to Earth again, and the FF battling. And this time you've got John Byrne doing the writing, the penciling, and the inking. Now, I think at one point, not in this issue, but at one point he even lettered the book. He just tried to do all of it. And this cover is spectacular. This is John Byrne with his old inking buddy, old by this point, Terry Austin. Yeah, just love it. And so that's why it is number 3, mainly because I just love Terrax. And number 2, I have something a lot darker. This is Moon Knight issue 26. This story is called Hit It, and it is written by Doug Moench with more beautiful artwork by Bill Sienkiewicz. So, as you might surmise from looking at this beautiful cover, this story is about child abuse. And I read that writer Doug Moench said this was originally just a 7-page script. But Bill Sienkiewicz started working on it, and he kind of went crazy on it and expanded it into a full issue-length story. And it turns out the reason is because Bill Sienkiewicz has suffered from child abuse. And Doug Moench did not know that when he gave him the story. And it turned out to be a good thing, though, because this issue is terrific. I don't mean the child abuse. I mean that, that he had this experience that helped him really bring this story home. And reportedly, from that interview I read, Bill Sienkiewicz said he felt much better after working through this story. So it helped him out a little bit. And we get treated to what is a wonderful, poignant, and powerful Moon Knight story. And that's why it is my number 2 favorite from 1982. But my number 1 favorite of 1982, insofar as comic books, is Marvel and DC present The Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans. This was a one-shot, co-published, co-produced story between Marvel and DC. Here you have Darkseid coming up with this plot to use the Dark Phoenix Force to help him turn Earth into a new apocalypse. It is wild. But the real killer part here is, though, the artwork. You have Walt Simonson, inked by Terry Austin. I mean, look at the cover. That's the same team on the cover here. Just beautiful, gorgeous stuff. And this was written by, again, Chris Claremont. How many books are in this top 10 written by Chris Claremont? What, 4? Nearly half. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, this was a great one. This was a thick one-shot. I think it was like 64 pages. I think it had Baxter stock, better than normal paper and everything. And yeah, it's really terrific. My example here, my scan, shows Chris Claremont's scribble across the X-Men logo, which Kristen, my daughter, also obtained that autograph for me. So yes, this is a keeper. It's been reprinted a few times. So, or if you're lucky, you can pick up the original as I have here. It is great stuff. It's really fun seeing, the Teen Titans and the X-Men together, and then seeing them illustrated by Walt Simonson is mind-blowing. So, and also seeing Walt Simonson's take on Kirby creations, Darkseid, that is terrific. So yeah, I highly recommend this one if you haven't already read it. Check it out. Of course, it is in that new, I believe it's in that new DC omnibus that has a bunch of these crossover events. Pretty sure it's in there. But anyway, check it out if you can. And that is my #1 favorite comic book of 1982. Hope you like taking a quick look at these. And subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up if you like this stuff. And I'll catch you next time.